Cloaked in the shadows.
Okay, Amanda.
Yeah, this is Cloaked in the Shadows.
What is Cloaked in the Shadows?
It's a podcast where anything goes from the strange to the weird to everything.
You know how helpful you are, you sometimes. you can tell tonight, folks, she's just a lady with us today. And we came across this lady on Facebook recently. And I really enjoyed the podcast she did somewhere else. So we've got fantastic Sarah Tye with us. Now, Sarah, tell people a little bit about yourself as a person and what led you on the path that you're on at the moment.
Yeah, I'm a tarot reader. I like to say I'm an intuitive tarot reader, which is not the same thing as fortune telling, which is what a lot of people assume that I do. I started back in high school. It was more at the time, it was more fun and mysterious when I first got into it because I was young and it felt like I was dabbling in, the taboo or whatever. But over time, I really started turning to my cards for bigger decision-making, difficult times in my life. And I realized there was something really potent and medicinal and insightful around it. So I really started using my cards for more of a spiritual practice. And then as it evolved and 2020 happened, the world shut down, I really felt called, and it was a calling because I kept saying no to it when it first showed up in my life, but I felt called to start doing this professionally, and I said no several times to the calling because I thought, well, who's going to take me seriously? There's nothing really here. What would people think? And then I was in a circumstance where my income went away, and it just kind of shook up my world a little bit and made me more open to possibility, especially because I was learning more about the tarot kind of behind closed doors at the time. And one of the cards that was coming up for me was all about learning to trust that everything happens for you and not to you, and that it's all to help your growth and evolution. So when my income went away, I was going between panicking and like trying to see what the lesson, the value of it was. And that's when I heard just this clear, calm, intuitive message that said, work on your business. And then I finally went all in, and I've been doing this professionally for 2.5 years.
Brilliant stuff. Now, I can't blame it. Lockdown's very similar over here as well. Amanda, you're probably best talk about that more and really how it impacted you, didn't it, really?
Yes, freelancers, so all my work dried up. And I didn't have any money coming in. And on the other side of it, this job, he was employed and he just got paid to sit at home and do nothing.
Yeah, in my case, Sarah, I'm diabetic still. The job I was at the time, I had to go to an office 5 days a week. And as soon as it went mad in England, which way we are, they sent me home and said, and this will make you smile this. They told me at the time, you made you smile this as well. They told me at the time, Andrew, go home, ring us up once a week, let us know he's still alive. We will get work to you eventually. It took them 7 months. So where's point?
Wow.
I know, so I was on full pay for 7 months while Amanda was ripping her hair out, literally, like you were almost certainly were doing yourself. And that is like it. I mean, it raised a point like I know it happened, Amanda, it certainly happened to you. It forces a reevaluation, doesn't it, of your life, of what you want to do next. And I can guess for you, like that must have been really difficult to actually do that, to think yourself, I've got to take this serious and it's calling to me. Was that what happened to you then at the time? Was it your tarot card reading?
So, when lockdown happened and everything shut down, that's really what prompted my spiritual journey, because I was agnostic. I believed in something, but I didn't know what my beliefs were. I didn't have anything solid to ground into. And so I first started listening to spiritual podcasts. It's actually the first time I ever found podcasting. So that was what my topic was. Yeah. And so I just thought, because I used to do a lot of Instacart and DoorDash. I don't know if you have that out there, but it's like a delivery job or yeah. And so I was in my car a lot and I had a lot of free time, and I was really curious about figuring out what my belief system was, my spirituality. So I just started listening to spiritual podcasting, and that's kind of what prompted me on this spiritual journey that led me to tarot. But yeah, when it first, well, as I was listening to these podcasts, I hear these really beautiful stories of people finding their purpose. And I kept thinking, man, I want to find a purpose. That's so cool. I want to experience that. But I didn't know what it would look like. And I dabbled in a few different things. I took a Reiki course. I, just kind of looked into different options. But tarot and throughout meditations and synchronicities just kept popping up. And I was really afraid of, being taken seriously. Ultimately, I really thought if I put myself out there as a tarot reader, people were going to be like, oh my God, this girl's crazy, or close family friends and family were going to be like talking me out of it, and I found out that once I just did it, once I just like took that first step and went all in, I didn't get any of the backlash I thought I was going to get. It was actually pretty cool to see that I can step into my own authenticity and not get people telling me I should stop. It was more of they just stayed away if they didn't agree with it, which gave me the space to explore it more.
But I think I think it's when you find something that really interests you, and you don't always find it straight away in life anyway. And this applies to Amanda as well, actually, and definitely you, Sarah, as well. As like, I've been writing myself or being creative since about 10 or 11. Amanda's case, you came later on in life, didn't you? So
I've always written since I was a child, but nothing really happened with it until I was like in my late 30s, early 40s.
Yeah, and I think it's the same for you, Sarah. I think it came along. It had always been there with your interest in this tarot. I think it sneaked up and you did it like very subtly, and then like sometimes when lockdown does what it does, it forces a massive reevaluation of your life. So how's your approach to your tarot card readings done since you started doing it fresh 2.5 years ago? Have you found how you do it all very different now, or have you keep constantly evaluating?
Yeah, that's a great question. It has evolved a lot. Like I said, when I first started with tarot, it was more entertainment and fun, and ooh, this is kind of spooky and different. And then, like I said, probably like 6 years ago was the first time I started seeing like, oh my gosh, there's real medicine here. That every reading I do for myself anyway, it was consistent, it was relevant, it was like profound. And so that was my first shift into this idea that tarot isn't just something for fun. There's something really special here. But then doing it professionally, that just blew my mind, because that took me a whole different, I was able to see tarot in a completely different light. It was like what I was doing for myself, but on a bigger scale, if that makes sense. When I very first started to kind of put myself out there, I posted on social media for my friends, and I just said, hey, I'm thinking about pursuing tarot reading as a business. Is anyone interested in a free reading to give me some feedback? And it was just kind of dabbling and seeing what would come from it. And I couldn't believe what did come from it. I mean, and the people that showed up to say yes for the reading, there were people I didn't know very well. They were like acquaintances on my friends list that I knew of, but didn't know very well. And all of them said it was spot on. All of them said that they took something from it. But 2 people actually came to me and said, hey, what's your Venmo? I want to send you a couple dollars as a thank you for this, because this really impacted my life. And that blew my mind. That was, oh my gosh. And so ever since then, that's when I really started seeing like, oh my gosh, there's really something magical here. And ever since then, now I see tarot as, it's like a tool that helps you see what you need to know right now. It shines a light on the thing that you desperately, the higher self is trying to get your attention on, so you can better your life and reach your highest self. So now it's like what I saw for myself, but now I'm able to see it and do it for other people.
I've got another question I want to ask. Is there anything you want to
Yeah, there was something that came to mind when you were saying that. I was wondering, when you see something that's like not exactly positive or is negative, how do you deal with that when telling the person?
With something that they're not supposed to know, or that they don't know. I misunderstood that.
Something negative or slightly less positive.
Oh,
it's not going to be positive all the time.
So that's a great question. I like to first of all, I really love the analogy that tarot is all medicine. Some medicine is just bittersweet than others. Like some medicine goes down a little more bitter, some of it goes down a little sweeter. But yeah, first of all, I do feel like all the cards are helpful. There's no bad cards. There are no scary cards. Although I know a lot of people don't understand that because they don't know the tarot. But there are some times where the reading comes off very heavy, and it speaks a lot of, usually when that happens, it speaks to like old trauma, or it speaks to like healing around not being enough or not feeling good. And like there's just, it can get heavy. And I just find that the best way to do it is to be not only tactful, but just show a lot of compassion and kind of just like hold their hand through the process. So that way they feel like they're being supported as they're hearing some of the heavier messages that are coming through. And then I usually apologize after the words, like, oh my gosh, that was really heavy. I'm so sorry. But like 9 times out of 10, they're telling me, no, that's exactly what I needed to hear. Yes, it was heavy, but that's what I needed. So I've just learned to just be really tactful with it. And then I also don't like to tell people what to do. That's another thing that I really focus on as a reader is I bring up invitations. This is an invitation that you're being asked to look at and heal and evolve in. But I'm not saying you have to do this. I'm putting the power back in their hands so they can decide what to do with the information I'm giving them. And I think that helps too, because I'm not just like saying this is the message and you need to take it. And no, this is what's coming through and this is what you're being invited to look at.
Quick question I want to do on this, because what we're going to do second half today, is Sarah's going to do a reading on Amanda soon. You're going to hear much less of me coming up in a few minutes' time, which is probably a blessing anyway. But yeah, I was listening to a podcast you did. You went on a lot about your gut instincts as well. So can you elaborate on when you're doing your readings then? How your gut instincts kick in?
That is great question as well. So I like to refer to that as intuition, but instinct is basically the same thing. It is really important. It does play a really big role. When it comes to the tarot, there's a couple really important aspects you need to have. One, you need to know the base meaning of each card, or at least what the meaning is to you, so you know what that card represents. And then usually there are spreads where the cards sit on certain placements, and those placements mean certain things. So you want to understand the base meaning of the card, and then the placement meaning, so you can integrate both of those meanings together. But intuition, I really feel like, is the thing that brings it all to life. And that's just been my own experience with it. And with that said too, I've learned also as I do these readings to try my best to remove my ego and my thought process and my judgments around it, because that can really take a reading in the wrong direction if I'm putting in my own analyzation, versus just when I show up for a reading, I truly believe that spirit, God, whatever modality you believe in, is showing up for the person that I'm reading for. And so that's why I removed my thought process, because the reading's not for me to figure out. It's just for me to interpret and share. And so that piece, at least for my own personal experience as a reader, is really important, because I'm basically opening myself up to receive what's coming through for whoever I'm sitting across and what spirit is wanting them to know. Because sometimes, even with the base meaning of a card and even with the placement meaning of the card, there are times where the meaning of the card shows up completely different than what I would normally read it as, because that's what's coming through in that moment. And it's funny, because when it first started, because that was a new thing that happened maybe 4 or 5 months into being a reader, and the first couple times it freaked me out, because I thought, wait, why am I feeling like I need to share a different message around this card? That's not how we would normally do it. And I just started to trust it. And I'd share what I was feeling. And every single time I would soon learn after why I needed to say it the way I did, because that's how they needed to hear it. It resonated that way for them. And so from then on, I just started to learn, okay, if I'm getting a different meaning, I need to just go with it and not question it. And same thing there are times where I'll get readings where, kind of to your point about it being like a heavier message, there are times where I'll get those and I'm like, I don't want to share this, but I do, because it's not my job either to edit it or sugarcoat it. And so I just trust. That's where the intuitive part comes in. I just trust that it's what I'm supposed to share, and it always works out.
You got any more questions, Amanda? Yeah, the last question on anger before we go to the reading part 2 is, obviously, we better explain to people next time, when you do reading Amanda, what's your pack of cards you're going to be reading from. That way, and obviously that way it gives people an idea, doesn't it? And have you found, well, we do that as well, because long story short, one of Amanda's friends does tarot card readings. Yes. Does that mean that, do you have just one set pack of cards, or do you have several?
Yes, that's a great question. I know a lot of readers do tend to collect cards, so I am not one of those readers, although I do have 2 decks that I'll use interchangeably, but there's one that I use most of the time, and then occasionally I'll use my other one. So the one I use most of the time is the Muse deck. And the one I'm going to use today, though, is the Light Seers deck. So I am choosing a different one for today. But which is kind of funny because those are actually the same artist. It's just two different styles of, two different decks, but it's the same person who illustrated them. But yeah, it's definitely important to pick a deck that resonates. And for me, it's either I feel like I need to go with my Light Seers deck. I feel is more of like a deep dive, and then my Muse deck is more of a lighter deep dive. It doesn't feel as heavy, or not as heavy, but it doesn't always go as deep. So like my Muse deck, I'll use those for events when I go and I do like parties and corporate parties and weddings, bachelorette parties, things like that, because most of the people I sit with have never had a reading before, and I don't want to scare them away with the with the images.
Yeah.
So the light and bright, vibrant. And then if I'm just going to do something more low key or like less, where I'm less worried about the representation of the cards, then I'll use my Light Seers deck.
Perfect. Now, obviously, we need to clarify, you do a lot of readings in person, but I should have asked you before this, but when you do your readings on, say, for example, Zoom, which we're on today, and in person, do you find your approach changes using two different mediums?
No, which is kind of funny because like I've even done readings. So on my website, I also offer email readings where I never even speak to the person. It's just a question that's emailed to me, and then I pull cards and I do a voice recording back for the reading. I have learned one in person is probably the best, just because the energy transaction is real time. But the way that I feel like it works is it's not about being in person. It's not about the cards themselves being magical. It's about intention. I really believe that we're all interconnected energetically. And so with that said, if I have the intention of showing up for someone who wants a reading and that person's showing up with the intention of receiving what comes through, then that's all that's needed. So even when I do these email readings where I never see this person, never speak to them, never even like know what they look like, and I respond with the reading, again, like 9 times out of 10, I get these emails back saying how much it resonated, and I don't know them, I don't see them, none of that. It's just their intention is I'm seeking guidance, and my intention is I'm here to show up for that.
Perfect.
So I don't matters that much.
Well, that's all my questions. Amanda, are you ready? Right, I'm going to shut up now. Sarah, do you want to? I'll let you explain to Amanda your process, and over to you two.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Amanda. So have you ever had a reading before? Is this your first one?
Had a couple, yeah.
A couple, okay. So I can focus on an area of your life. And I mean, the big ones are like love, career, purpose, etc. But really, we can focus on any specific area or question you have. Or we could just see what your higher self wants you to know and go a little bit more general, but usually ends up being resonant in its own way.
Just a more general reading.
So I'm going to do my typical higher self spread. It's actually a spread that I created. It's kind of funny how that turned out too, because it wasn't on purpose. It just kind of created itself, and it just kind of went with it. So now I call it my higher self spread, and it's one I use most often. It's 7 cards. So it's 7 cards. The first card I want to go over is the theme. Then there's past, present, future energies, and then higher self messages overall. And so the very first card is the theme, and it's the Knight of Wands. And this is actually, I love this card. It's basically saying that right now your theme in your life is learning how to really connect with your authenticity on like a really deep level. And usually this speaks to connecting with some kind of a creative process, something that could even be a career, or it could just be a hobby, but it's something that you love to do, but it's different than what other people are doing. And it could be kind of scary to show up and embody this version of you and say, this is me, this is what I love to do. I know it's not the norm, but it doesn't really matter because it fills me up and it's very authentic to me. And so right now you're kind of in this space where you're learning how to be yourself, live life to the beat of your own drum without feeling like you have to conform, which is cool because likely in your more recent past, you did kind of feel like you had to conform to be accepted and you wanted to be like everyone else. So no one thought, no one rejected you or anything like that. And now you're really learning to worry less about if people accept you for you, especially as you lean more into your authenticity and lean more into this thing that really lights you up. And you're just following your own inner compass, if that makes sense. So that's our starting point, which is pretty cool. Looking at the recent past, we have the Justice card. This one could very well even be speaking to what helped push you into finally just owning yourself and not being afraid to show up as you are. So the Justice card usually speaks to feelings of injustice, feelings of unfairness. And this is something, again, in your past. So you went through this period of time where you were feeling like really stuck in this feeling of like, and I feel like it has something to do with you not being able to be yourself. Like you were trying to be yourself, but there are people in your life that were making it difficult for you to do that. And maybe even there could have even been some backlash around you trying to just be yourself and do the thing that you love. And it made you feel like there's a sense of injustice and frustration. And with this here, it's telling me that you took the time to accept that they're not going to change their mind, that they're not going to be able to understand where you're coming from. And instead of getting stuck and stewing in the, oh my gosh, why don't they understand? This isn't fair. You finally just said, I accept that they're not going to get it. It's not their thing to get. And instead, I'm going to choose to let myself move forward and not hold myself back. And I think that is what led you into finally saying, you know what, this is me. And I'm going to lean more into this energy because it feels good. It feels like home and it lights me up. So presently we have the Four of Swords reversed. And this one's telling me, so what led you to finally like embodying who you are and all of that and taking and accepting the justice and letting yourself move forward is you basically had to step away from all that toxicity. You had to kind of unplug, rest, and just kind of take a break from life for a little bit to figure yourself out. And the Four of Swords reverse is letting you know that higher self is like, that was good for you. It did what it needed to. It helped get you that spark. But now you need to come out of hiding. With the Four of Swords reversed, it's saying you've taken the break you need. Now it's time to let yourself come out. Now it's time to reconnect, and maybe not necessarily reconnect with those that hurt you. Doesn't mean, I mean, of course, if you feel called to, that could have a different outcome. But just in general, don't feel like you have to keep hiding to be yourself. Now it's time to learn how to come out in the world and fully be yourself and come out of that hiding, if that makes sense. Moving into the near future, I love this combination. So we have the Queen of Swords and we have the Nine of Cups. So the Queen of Swords is the near future card. This one is the higher self message to the near future. Queen of Swords is all about boundaries. So now that you've taken time to figure out who you are and what you want out of your life and how you want to live your life, now it's time to set boundaries and say to those that may not understand or may want you to go back to who they know you as, but you don't want to go backwards, right? The Queen of Swords is all about saying, this is what I will accept in my life. This is what I won't accept. This is how I want to be treated. I'm not going to be a people pleaser and be what everyone else wants me to be anymore. You're basically just refusing to be put in someone else's box. Now you're using your sword to say no more and drawing that line in the sand. So that's kind of the work that you're going into now. You took the time, the hiatus you needed to figure out what you, like the direction you want to take. Now it's time to get really resolute and make that like, okay, this is it. No one can cross this boundary. No one can change what I'm trying to accomplish anymore. And the higher self message to that, which is the Nine of Cups, this is a wishes and dreams card. There's a vulnerability that comes with the Nine of Cups. So while the Queen of Swords itself is kind of, some people can see the Queen of Swords as being kind of cold and rigid, which when you set boundaries for the first time, you kind of have to do that because otherwise the people who crossed your boundaries so many times won't take you seriously. So there is kind of a cold rigidness to the Queen of Swords at first while you're learning boundaries. The Nine of Cups is saying you also don't want to shut down your heart though. You don't want to close off your heart. You don't want to wall your heart off. You want to keep yourself open and vulnerable to possibility, to receive all that life wants to give you. And so there could also be a feeling of like a fear of, well, what if I set boundaries and it doesn't work? So like, what if I get my hopes up that I'm setting all these boundaries, but that they just keep crossing over it and then I get hurt again? And so the Nine of Cups, the thing about the Nine of Cups is when people are afraid to get their hopes up, they shut down because they don't want to be vulnerable enough to get the pain. And higher self is like, no, you got to stay open to receive possibilities. So like, let's say that happens, and the worst case scenario is that you try to set boundaries, it doesn't work, and it hurts and all of that. Don't close yourself off. That's just when you get clearer on the boundaries. But you have to keep your heart open to receive more. If you close yourself off, the universe can't give you the next best opportunity. Usually what happens is when something doesn't work out, it's because that thing doesn't belong in your life. It's because that thing, it just wasn't for you. And now when you remove it, you're clearing space for the thing that is for you, but you have to stay vulnerable and open to receive it. So I really feel like what higher self is saying is, yes, set the boundaries, yes, hold those down, but don't close off your heart, and keep yourself open to receiving what's meant to be yours too, like from the universe and everything else. We have the 5 of Cups reversed, and then we have the 10 of Wands reversed. So the 5 of Cups is speaking to, I think it's kind of remnants of that justice energy. There's still grieving you have to do around what had happened. So that what you had accepted, that you can't change other people, how they feel about you and whether or not they accept you. There's another piece to that. Like, yes, acceptance allows you to move forward, but there's also the part of you that's grieving the fact that they didn't come along for the ride. There's a part of you that still needs to process those feelings. And there's some resistance around that. It's hard to, it's like if you acknowledge it and grieve it, then you're actually seeing it as that's really what happened. You know, you're having to actually really accept it. And so higher self is really saying that you need to take the time to grieve. You can't run from it. You can't hide from it. It needs to be done. And not only that, but it's going to help you be more resolute in your boundaries. It's actually going to help you more being with the vulnerability and being more open to possibility, because when you're able to process your feelings and move forward, you're keeping your heart open. When you're not processing your feelings and you're not going back there, then you're actually slowly closing yourself off. And so higher self is really encouraging you to take the time to grieve that. And then the 10 of Wands, this one is saying that, so you've gotten better about being more aligned with what lights you up and doing the things that you love, but you're still taking on too much. The 10 of Wands is saying that you have a lot that you're carrying, and that even though you're doing more of what you love, you're still taking on things that you shouldn't really be taking on anymore. And you're not checking to see if you have the space for it. You're just taking it on. So like, let's say you already have a big weight that you're carrying, and someone else comes along and says, hey, I need you to take this. You're just going to say, okay, and take it, even though you really don't have the space or the time or the means to carry it. So what higher self is really encouraging you to do, on top of grieving and processing your feelings around that injustice, also taking inventory of everything you have that you're carrying in your life, and see what you're supposed to keep carrying and what you can put down. What is something that you're carrying that you don't need to be, or what's something you could delegate and have someone else help you carry because it's just too much for you to do it on your own. And I think that's going to help you make the space to, get the bravery to come out of that hiatus that you came into and lay those boundaries down, because you're not going to be so bogged down with everything you're carrying. It won't be so heavy. You'll have the space to finally look at, okay, this is how I want to shape my life. This is how I want to live my life. I actually have the space to look at that and make decisions about it, instead of just kind of trucking on and taking on more and more and more that I don't need to keep taking on.
Yeah.
So that is everything that came through.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Especially with the boundaries as well. It's like, just a while back, I would have said yes to everything. I've started saying no to things now, but like you said, there's still things that I'm saying yes to that I should probably say no to.
Do you have any questions about anything, or did it just all kind of hit home for you?
No, it makes a lot of sense.
This one was kind of an example of a heavier reading. This was less of the lighter one. This one was more of the deep dive that I was referring to.
Okay, right, guys and girls, yes, you got the motor back now and stuff. Right, gotta say, it's like what I heard in the background, that's Sarah, and obviously it's more than comment with it. I agree with what you said on that, because
I don't know if you could hear him laughing in the background when you said take it on too much, and he was laughing, going, yeah, that's true.
No, I can hear that. Yeah, it's funny because when
I was sniggering then in the background. I know exactly what she's like. It's all I'm going to say then. So, but that's not Cloaked to the Shadows of territory. Now, obviously, that's it for today, guys and girls. But before we finish, it's only fair, since Sarah's been our guest today. Sarah, a couple of questions I always ask on Spoken Label, my Alpha Artist Into Chat podcast. If people want to find out more about you, where do you recommend they go?
So I have my website is journeythroughtarot.com, all spelled out. And I'm also on Instagram at Journey Through Tarot as well. That's my handle. I offer email readings, which is the one I refer to. If you don't want to talk to me, if you don't want to interact with me directly, and you just want to ask a question and get a personalized recorded reading back, that's probably the best option to go with. Or I also offer private sessions, one-on-one sessions, so you can work with me for either 15-minute sessions, 30-minute, or hour sessions. And I'm also offering a code, like a discount code. If you use the code word Journey, all caps, you can get a 20% discount on any of those options I just went over. But yeah, so it would be journeythroughtarot.com, or Instagram's probably the biggest place to find me on social media because I'm on there all the time.
Brilliant. Well, hang around, Sarah, because I want to talk to you a bit more off camera today, and microphone anyway. But I've really enjoyed this today. I know from this one's body language, if she thought, frankly, if Amanda hadn't been impressed, I would have noticed more. So I want to thank you on behalf of both of us, Sarah. It's been a privilege and a pleasure today, definitely. Okay, so. Right, Amanda.
Walking into the shadows.
See you all next time. And thanks again, Sarah. Take care, folks.
Cloaked in the shadows.